you're wicked smart to take advantage of that. But your growth, I'd say, is not the norm. So could you share some of like your inner tips of how you actually grew? All right, Phil, how you doing, man?
I'm good, bro. Good morning.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning to you too. So you're on the East Coast. I'm now on the West Coast for a bit. So it's been a little bit weird for me, but I'm excited for this chat. What are you up to today besides this call?
Dude, so like today I'm chilling. This
Okay.
call and then just like some like free time to think and be creative and stuff. So I try not to do too much on Fridays. My
Nice.
policy is summer Friday, every Friday.
Nice. I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, I try to do, that's why I usually try to put my podcast on Friday for the same sort of reasons. So I'm excited. I'm glad we're on the same wavelength here. So we've connected over on social for a little while now, and I've been consuming a lot of your stuff. Love it all the time, especially your tweets and now your TikToks. All awesome. But
Thanks, dude.
I've actually really liked the most when you shared it more about like your story. So for anybody who has no idea who you are, could you give us the elevator pitch on who you are and how you got to this like online space?
Yeah, I'll give the super abridged background story. So I've been I'm just like a product of Web 1.0, like old ecom, right? So I've been entrepreneurial since I was a little kid. Like I started washing cars when I was 15. I moved dope here and there, and just like I was always trying to like make cash to do stuff. I was like flipping candy at school, whatever. So and when I was in college, I had this roommate that we met on Craigslist actually. And we became very good friends, and he was good at design, and he was designing these t-shirts that like coincided with the release of Nike Dunks, which were like a hot shoe at the time. This is like 2005.
Yep.
And I was like, dude, why don't we sell these things? And so we sort of just like figured it out together. But initially what we started to do was sell these t-shirts on message boards where these Nike heads hung out, NikeTalk.com, things like that. And so it was very like, again, Web 1.0, Shopify didn't exist. There was no ads or Facebook ads or whatever. And we would just transact in PayPal, but we got good. I just got started building a list of people that were interested in what we sold, and just sort of fell into marketing this little rinky dink t-shirt brand that we conceptualized at our house when we were living in college. And then from there, it's sort of like it evolved into like more of a streetwear t-shirt brand called 24K Gold. And we were just like, we didn't know anything, dude. And so we were just like going from store to store, carrying around a cardboard box of our designs. But ultimately we got that, I think it was like 25 or 26 stores throughout California. Wow. Again, no strategy. We were 21 at the time. And we're just sort of like school of hard knocks sort of thing. And then he left school a semester before I did. And then it sort of just like fizzled out. Like it wasn't operated like a real business, but we had moderate success knowing nothing and just hustling. And then from there, like the landscape from online started to change, right? Like Shopify was there, Facebook ads. I don't remember when Facebook ads started, but Klaviyo was a tool. I don't know. It's just like learning, keeping my ear to the street on ecom. And then I would always have like stores here and there that I would like conceptualize, throw together, and get some hit, some didn't hit. And so at that time, like I was telling people like the internet wasn't what it is right now. And I like didn't know what I didn't know, but also I didn't know like how to seek it out. So I was like, in retrospect, I was like straddling the old world way to do stuff, like go to school, get a job, and like this new world way of like, no, there's this internet thing, but I don't really know how to harness it yet. So I was like straddling both. So I would have my stores, I would have my like traditional W-2 sort of like career path at the same time, working in startups and all that stuff. And then ultimately, fast forward a number of years, not to bore everyone with it, I was working at a SaaS company that has since been acquired by some public company in Canada. But I was there, I was doing some agency stuff on the side, right? And web design, ads, email, and stuff like that. But I stayed at this job 2 years too long. I was just like unfulfilled, bored, just like coasting. And I had my little side thing, so my quality of life was good. But I was sort of like all over the place from a mental standpoint. I didn't know what I wanted. Ultimately, I finally left that thing, went all in on the agency, and then I realized pretty quickly I just created a new job for myself where I don't have a boss, I have several bosses, right? And so I was doing that, and I had this little ecom brand on the side, and I had this conversation with my dad. I was like, Dad, I'm focusing on these two things. They're both doing like okay. I don't know what to do. He's like, dude, you have 1 foot on the dock, 1 foot on the boat, in a boat. You have to pick one thing and go all in on it, and don't look at anything else until that thing that you choose is in a place where it can sort of function without your undivided attention.
Wow.
And so at the time, the agency was farther along. That was what was supporting me. So I went all in. I chose that. Best decision I ever made. And I honored the commitment I made to myself over the last 3 years. Like, I'm not focusing on any side hustles or anything until the agency's in a place where it can function without my undivided attention day in and day out. And so, that's the super quick, abridged speed talk version of the origin story. That like conversation with my dad got me to this point. Otherwise, I probably would still be as lost as I was.
Damn, that's amazing, man. Yeah, and we're definitely going to unpack a lot of what you just said there, because there were so many different ways that we could take that. But that piece of advice from your dad is so good. And as entrepreneurs, like, we all have, to a degree, shiny object syndrome. So, and I can say, even for myself personally, like, I've taken on too many things that I shouldn't have taken on, and it's come at like a detriment to something else, or what could have been the core focus. So I absolutely love that. But one thing that I saw that you made some content about that wasn't included in that fast pitch story was how you randomly moved to New York City. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, so it wasn't that random. So I went to school in San Diego for undergrad, and I would always be back home in LA, like hang out with my friends, because the proximity was so close, right? Yeah. And my friends, they were just like living in the microcosm in which they were that I left to go to school, right? So I was like always like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, but I never like broke the chain. So in retrospect, I wish I would have listened to the suggestion of my parents and people that gave me advice that go farther away, so I could actually like experience something new. But whatever. So after school, I went back to California, hanging with my friends. It's not they were bad kids or anything, but they were just like limited worldview, limited world experience, and so forth. And so when I got back there, I was just sort of like, I was just like, I don't know, I felt trapped. Like, I'm having a good time, but I'm not really fulfilled because I'm not challenged, or from a professional standpoint, or with my friends, like no one's doing it. No one's like pushing me to be better. Yeah. And so I was just sort of like blah. And then I was like, my dad would always tell me like, go try something, get out of here, go somewhere, because I didn't for school. And so ultimately what I did was I went to Seattle, Washington, Austin, Texas, New York City for a week each solo, just to see like, where do I vibe with? And I wanted to leave Cali. That's why I didn't go to San Fran. But at the time I was very into like startups. Okay. And these are all like startup hubs that weren't Silicon Valley, obviously. And so Seattle was like cool, but it was just like, I don't know, kind of a little bit too slow. And for me at the time I was 23, maybe 5. I don't remember how old I was, in my mid 20s. And Austin was cool, but it was like not the Austin that we have today. And so there was like, I don't even think Austin has really a vibe now. So it really had no vibe 10 years ago. Okay. And it was like, I went in August, it was like so hot. And I was like, I don't know about this, dude. And then I went to New York, and New York just has like an energy to it. And so I was like, staying in LA is not an option. Seattle's not the move. Austin's not the move. If I don't go to New York now, I don't know if I'll ever do it, and I'll regret it when I'm 50 that I didn't do it. So I went back to LA. It's pretty much sold everything I didn't need. Moved to New York with no job, no network, and just like figured it out.
Damn. That's so awesome. And I think a lot of people who do have sort of an entrepreneurial itch, or like do their own thing, they have the same sort of scenario, because obviously you love your hometown, your friends and your boys, you love them. But like, once you start going down a different path, like naturally the friend group that you once had no longer matches where you're going, and you have to kind of make that decision. And I think not many people do, right? So it's like, what was it in you that you're like, yeah, I got to do this?
Well, my dad always told me that like, you have to put yourself in positions to get struck by lightning, and you're not gonna do that doing the same thing you've been doing. So I think it's that, and then I also think about like, growth comes from being uncomfortable, right? And putting yourself in those situations was kind of saying what my dad's saying a different way. But like, you think about going to the gym, you're only getting stronger, bigger if you're lifting more weights, or eating more, or combination thereof. But when you're growing, getting stronger, your muscles hurt. Yeah. And again, like that's the pain you have to go through to get to the next level. So I just think about that sort of analogy and apply it to this stuff.
That's fantastic, man. That's amazing. And obviously the move worked out for you.
Yeah, man. I think, well, my mom was like, what if it doesn't work? Like, a concerned Jewish mom. And I was like, I'll come back. Worst case, I'll come back here with my tail between my legs. But like in my brain, like that's not an option, So it wasn't fun, dude. Like I remember like budgeting to the penny, like this is for groceries, this is for Subway, etc. So I'm, thankful, fortunate I don't have to operate that way anymore. But it was like, I mean, it was fun to be young in New York, but not fun from a financial standpoint because it's hard living like that.
Oh yeah, I remember those days. I've never lived in a city that was that expensive when I didn't have money, but even in college, like having to budget dollar for dollar, it trains you for life and for everything. So no, I get that completely. But another question I had for you on the story that you went through was, what jobs were you doing in these startups when you had the corporate jobs?
Yeah, so they weren't really corporate; they were more startup-y. So like, I have a natural like inherent like contempt for authority. So like in a corporate setting, I just like it. I don't vibe with it. It's just not for me. Nor is the startup setting with the boss either. But there's more leniency there than in a more traditional corporate structure. And so, but I was doing like biz dev. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, like, or what I was good at, really. Again, like at the time I was in my early 20s, and you think back, like when you're in school and stuff, you have this major life decision that's like put upon you, like, what do you want to do forever? Crazy. But it's like an impossible decision to make. So I was just like figuring out who I was as a person, like what I'm good at and stuff. So, but I was always drawn naturally to like sales or marketing, things like that. And so I was doing biz dev. And then one of the companies that I worked at early on it's called Beachmint. They had like all these celebrity curated fashion verticals at the time. It was like on the onset of like social commerce. This is like back in 2004. And so what I was doing there was like building up these like ambassador teams all throughout the country. They would go to, it was like pretty much like guerrilla acquisition on the ground in these various cities throughout the country. And then when I moved to New York, I was like, SaaS was the way to go. Like I had a sour taste in my mouth from the consumer stuff in LA. And I was like, I like SaaS. It's cool. And it's like the multiples are different, and it's just an entirely different business model. And there was doing the first company I worked at, it was like a very interesting experience in like this, the chicken or the egg thing in tech. Like we were building this marketplace, and essentially it was selling in the solution so that publishers can merchandise their websites with products, but not have to deal with fulfillment or anything. And so at the time we had to like get the publishers, but we also needed the companies that had the products to fulfill for them. And so talking to both parties, and like the brands wanted to know what publishers do you have. The publishers are like, what brands do you have? And then there's the whole technical piece also. So that was a great experience, and not easy in the least. And then at a certain point, I had this opportunity to go to this other SaaS company in the loyalty space, headquartered in Canada. And I was just like, I was ready for a change. And I was like number 3 at this other SaaS company. So I was like, screw it, let's go. And that had its own set of like, trials and challenges and headaches and all that stuff, as it does. But I know it was great just to get exposure get exposure to SaaS, being like there on the ground floor from day one, pretty much.
That's amazing, man. That's awesome. So at what point through all this did you start your agency?
I started it like, I would say my second or third year at the last real job that I had.
Okay. And so what services were you offering?
I was just arbitraging stuff.
Okay.
Right. And so do some web design, email, I knew so well. So I would do that myself, or like Facebook ads. I would like try and learn it or get arbit out to someone else. But it was pretty much email ads or some like web or funnel design stuff. And I'm not a designer. Okay. And I just like, I was just like trying to hustle, figure it out so I could supplement the income that I had from work,
Of course.
It's very humble beginnings.
Yeah. No, that's a great starting point. But then through doing all of that, obviously now you're the email guy. So how did you, like, what was it that you're like, this is the lane, this is the vertical, this is what I want to do?
It was just because like I didn't like ads. Okay. Because it's so like, I just didn't understand it at the time and so I was like, I don't really want to learn this. There's all these technical components that are moving, and I had been doing email for so long. I just had the most confidence in it. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I'm just going to lean into the stuff that I already know how to do to make it easier on myself. And then it made it a lot easier to sell it, because I was only selling one thing as opposed to offering 3 or 4 different things, and which convoluted the message and made it more difficult for the prospect to understand how I could help them, or difficult for me to understand how I could, position it to them and so forth. So yeah, that's also when like it was a major turning point when I cut the other stuff and just focused on the one thing.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think every agency owner goes through the exact same like learning curve where you try to
Yeah.
offer to everyone and then you realize that's a terrible idea and then you niche down and you win there. So like, yeah, I had the exact same story here, but for email, I think that's probably the most powerful vehicle. That's also the most slept on. So it's like, like, how do you convey that message to like why it works so well to people who maybe aren't like seeing the true benefits of it currently?
Yeah. Well, I think number one, it's like the oldest marketing modality on the internet,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like the market, the audience is very accepting of receiving marketing messaging in their inbox.
Yes.
Right. Number one, it's like tried and true proven forever. That's number one. Number two, I think think about how traffic behaves on the internet. Like, you're driving traffic to your landing page or to your website or whatever. To this day, I've never seen one business that has a 100% conversion rate to that traffic that they're driving, paid or organic, right? So where email is like so powerful is like those people might not be ready to buy today, but they're at least interested in learning more. And if you're thoughtful about capturing the lead or the intent from the person that came to the site in the first place, and then using email to communicate with them over time, you're just using the modality that's tried and true and trusted to build equity with them to ultimately get your prospect for whatever you're selling on the phone or back to your shopping cart or whatever it may be. And you have pretty much 100% control over it. So we're not beholden to the algorithms like on Facebook and Google and so forth, and it's not pay to play. So if you're doing the right things, like being respectful of the audience and have empathy for them and not abusing the privilege that you have their email address, if you do those things right over time, and in addition to the other things that I mentioned, it's just like, it just works. I've never seen it not work.
Yeah.
When it's done appropriately.
That's amazing. Yeah. Even as an organic social guy, I preach to all of our clients that you need to have an email list because like theoretically the channels I'm helping you build, they could be taken away tomorrow. Right.
Like
so
that.
It's like, yeah, exactly. An email list is probably the only one, and maybe an SMS list too, but I feel like that's harder to grow. But an email list is so powerful. So that's awesome. But you mentioned the importance of doing it right. Because I've been on some email lists where I'm like, this person is definitely not doing it right. And then I've seen some where it's like, this is awesome. So what are some tips that you can give for people to make sure that they do it right?
Yeah, I think I always lead with like empathy or respect for the audience first, because without them, there is nothing.
Yes.
Right. And so, there's either brands or companies out there that will like email every single day. And whereas like they might have their business case for doing so. Right. But I just go back to like, does that make the most sense for the audience? In some instances, yes. In the overwhelming majority of instances, no, it's not necessary. And usually for the average creator, the average business owner, the average e-com store, whatever, it's just not necessary to message that frequently, nor will you be able to strategically do the things you have to do to have it be an effective program if you're doing it every day. So what I go back to is like having respect and empathy for the audience, but also knowing like where you are as a creator or business person in terms of your bandwidth to be able to honor the commitment you make to yourself or how frequently you're going to communicate to your audience in this modality, right? Like your audience, they're putting stuff together organically for YouTube or TikTok or whatever, right? And they have their plan for doing so, 3 videos a day or for TikTok or 1 YouTube a week or whatever it is, right? And so email is the same thing, just a different modality, and it's with words, with plain text normally, and maybe some creative rather than a camera. But at the end of the day, it's just like what I would say to most people is like, if you just commit to yourself that you're going to send 1 email a week, that's infinitely better than 99% of your competitors, because they have no constraints or structure around it. Okay. So, and if you're doing once a week, it's really hard not to be respectful of the audience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. 1 week's not a huge deal, but in terms of getting better at the actual messaging, like what are some things that you see people get wrong all the time when it comes to actually structuring the emails that are sent out?
Yeah, I just think usually people have a tendency to try and put too much in one email. And so they make it this long ass thing. When at the end of the day, this long ass thing is really 4 emails in one. So if you break it apart, then it's just like, you don't always have to reinvent the wheel every single week to try and like pull something out of thin air. It's like, you already have all these ideas, just divide it by 4 and just spread it over the course of the month. And you just make your life a whole lot easier. That's from awesome. From a conceptualization, production, and distribution standpoint.
Yeah.
And for the audience.
For sure. And then I saw, I think I've seen you do it in a tweet, but I saw a TikTok most recently where you basically said like the importance of speaking very like casually and simply. Can you
Yeah.
can you speak to like why that's so important?
Well, I think like most people aren't copywriters, right? I'm not. And so it's just like when people start to write an email, they like try and overcompensate for the fact that they're not one because subconsciously they know, and it just comes out like all messed up. And so that's why I always say, just like I have exposure to so many stores or businesses and business owners. I just see similarities across them or patterns. And so what people tend to do is they set a goal that's they set themselves up for failure, right? And then they're not copywriters, so they try to overcompensate the writing, which then makes it more difficult for them to honor their commitment of one a week, because then there's this whole psychological thing of like, oh, it's not good. It takes longer time. It takes longer. Then they feel guilty that it's delayed. It's like this vicious cycle. So on the copy piece, I think that I always say just like write it as if you're talking to your friend at the bar or this complete stranger at the bar, and just like write it like that. Because like for the majority of people, like your audience is just normal people.
Yes.
Also, that you would just talk to at a bar. So just write like that. And if there's a spelling mistake or a grammar mistake, like it really doesn't matter. The other thing people don't realize, dude, is like these emails have a shorter lifespan than an Instagram story.
True.
So most emails get opened and read within like 4 or 6 hours of them being sent, whereas an Instagram story lasts 4 times longer. But the interesting piece is that your email will get substantially more engagement than the Instagram story because the algo. Yes. So it's like, I think it's important for people to keep the lifespan of an email like at the forefront of their minds, because what they also try and do is like make it perfect. So they take all this extra time to make it perfect, and then it sends, and then it only lives for 4 hours. Yeah. So I always go back to like volume. Consistency is more important than perfection.
That's bomb. I love that. So who is your typical client within your agency?
A lot of e-com stores, and like I would say info products or like digital products businesses.
Amazing. And so if someone's listening to this and they fall into that camp, like where can they reach out to work with you guys?
I mean, hit me on Twitter at the Phil Rivers, or just email me, Phil at GoTetra, GOTETRA.co.
Awesome. Yeah. So actually, you brought up one of the points I wanted to talk about, which is Twitter. But I have a few questions about the agency first before we go there. So with your agency, from the advice of your dad, he said build it out until it can stand alone without you. So you've done that, and I'm someone who I'd say I haven't successfully achieved that. So I'm asking this pretty selfishly, but also I think it'll provide a ton of value here. Like, how did you go about doing that? Because that's a big undertaking.
Yeah, man. So like, I think it all comes down to like backing out of certain things when it's the right time to back out of certain things. So for my experience, this is what I did, playing to my strengths, was the first thing I started to get help on was fulfillment, right? So that would be writing, designing emails, scheduling emails, and working with the clients, so that I could focus on higher leverage things in the business, which is marketing and selling. Okay. And then I started to back out of sales. So I hired someone to help me on the sales side of things. So I went from taking 4 or 5 calls a day to maybe 2 a week. And then this person, the sales guy, like just freed me up so I could focus exclusively on marketing. And I would say more broadly, just like operations. And then as time's gone on, like I enjoy the marketing the most, right? And so like I'm reluctant to give that up, but I have people helping me with certain components of it now, right? Like shooting video, editing video, posting. Like I'm not doing that stuff. So some of the marketing stuff is off my plate, but now most of my time is focused on like marketing, and then operationally staying on top of the account leads and the project managers to make sure things are running smoothly, but little by little giving them more and more responsibility so they can take ownership, so they're less dependent or reliant on me. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's like baby steps. Finding the right people that you can get farther and farther away, and then also easing them into that. And I think that's a mistake I've done big time, is that I haven't eased them into responsibility slowly enough. I think I've just kind of been like, okay, this is yours now, which has been an unrealistic way to approach things. So I think that's definitely a better way to go about it.
I think at the beginning of any new team member, it's like, how do you set up the first month for them to have success? And so like what a lot of agency owners or business owners do. They hire this person and just like throw them in without any sort of like hand holding, for lack of a better term, to like get them up to speed so they feel comfortable so they can flourish thereafter. So what one thing we've always done is like someone comes in, we start to give them exposure to clients, but they're like riding shotgun with the person that has been running the account. Okay. And so then we start to give them like, okay, do X, Y, Z, or show them our process over the course of a 3-4 week period. So that way they can like little by little get comfortable internally. How do we communicate internally? How do we communicate with clients? How do we turn stuff around? How do we communicate things good or bad to clients? So on and so forth. So then in about 4 weeks time, like they have a lot of that learning, they've had that support and they get the process. And that way they also feel a lot more confident after going through that as well. So it's like very front loaded for us. We give so much effort, I would say, in the first 30 to 90 days of someone new coming on board, so that they need us less later. I would what I call it is like paying tax up front.
I love that. And so have you found that that's improved the success rate of hires?
Very much so, dude.
Yeah.
That 100%. Having like a process around onboarding them and getting them trained up. Yeah. But then I think it's also about like having like the culture is so important. So our team is distributed. I've never had an office since I started this thing. So we got people all over the country. And so I think it's about like, how do we create the culture and like empower people and make it like a fun place to be, even though they're just working from home. You know what I mean? And I always tell people when I speak to them, it's like, yo, you might not believe me right now, but you've never worked at a place like this, because like we treat you like an adult. Like you're an adult, right? You have a responsibility. As long as you get your stuff done, you're not going to, I have no problems. If you want to leave at 2 on a Friday, if your shit's done, by all means. If you want to leave at 3 on a Wednesday and go surfing, by all means, right? Like we don't have a problem until we have a problem. You know what I mean? And just communicate and be a responsible adult. And dude, this is the best part for me, is like a month in or 2 months in, 3 months in, once people have been here, they're like, yo, Phil, everything you told me when we were in the interview process about what it was like is like, it's more than true. And it's just like, it's so refreshing to be at a place like this and stuff. So that's like the biggest fuel for me, is just like, I honor my commitment that I told them to get them here, but they're like living it and they're telling me straight up, it's fucking awesome.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's got to be great for retaining employees too, especially keeping them happy and all that stuff. So for now, for getting more like new clients and expanding the business, do you have a sales team in place now that handles all that? Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. That's amazing. And so you mentioned a few seconds ago, or a few minutes ago at this point now, Twitter. That's where your biggest following is, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so what about it, Twitter, drew you to the platform? And then like, why do you love Twitter so much?
So when I started Twitter, this is a year ago now, I was just like, at the time it was because I was tired of being dependent on Facebook ads for success. And with Facebook ads, every single month I was caught in this like pool of feast or famine, where I'd have 2 really good weeks in a month from a lead production and call production standpoint, and 2 bad weeks a month, but for no rhyme or reason. Nothing was different, right? And so it was just like what Facebook would net out was different. And it's just like, I wanted to pull my hair out. Like you could see all these grays, dude. It was like, it's all from Mark. It's all from Mark. And so then I was like, I need something else, right? And I had the email list, but the email list is fed by Facebook ads, right? And so I was like, I need something on the organic side. And at the time, I was like, I like the on-camera stuff outside of ads, like organic social every day. I was like, it's just not something I was ready to do yet. And so I was like, with Twitter, I was like, it's just text. And just from me consuming it, I feel like the people here, or their mindset on this platform versus others, is just different. And so at the time, I had been on Twitter for a long time, but hadn't used it. So when I picked it back up last June, I had like maybe 900 followers or something. So I didn't have an audience there by any means. And I started tweeting, and my initial sort of like goal was, if I can sign 2 clients in the first 2 months, I'll keep doing it. And I got 4. So then I was like, all right, dude, like there's something here. And then I just kept going, and it just like organically grew. And at the time I had no aspirations of like building a big following. It was really just, could this be a reliable acquisition source for calls to get clients every single month? And could I get 2 to 3 clients a month from this? That's really what it boiled down to. And then as the account grew, like I never had like ooh, I want to be an influencer or have all these followers or whatever. It was really just, can I acquire clients? And then as the account grew, I started to see how like people interacted differently with me. Like once I had some cachet, and then once I crossed 10K, like I don't know what it was, but it was just literally something changed. Like how people would message me or whatever. Like I just noticed it. And then I like this light bulb went off for me. I was like, yeah, this is a client acquisition source, but now I have so much, like I build an audience now, or I'm building one, and I have like leverage in different ways, right? So like this year, I would say 85% of the people that are on the team now came from Twitter.
Oh, wow.
So from like talent acquisition source, just like making connections, I would say I met you through Twitter.
Yep.
Right. And like, I would say a good handful of the people that I consider like dear, like friends now, I met on Twitter in the last year.
That's amazing.
And so it's like, it's not only acquisition, it's just like having the leverage from an audience standpoint and just to test things out. Like I have this idea, do people vibe with it before I spend all these time, effort, resources in the business to do it, for example, meeting folks like you, and also talent acquisition. So now my view is like changed completely. Whereas before was clients, now it's just like, how do I amass an audience that trusts me, vibes with me, so that I can tap into it for whatever the thing is down the road.
Yeah.
And same on TikTok and IG, but Twitter is just my main focus.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure eventually you'll get the huge numbers on TikTok. It'll probably end up surpassing your Twitter, but you're so right about the people that are on Twitter. I say this all the time. I think that Twitter is the best place it's like the creator's platform in terms of like, if you're like an entrepreneur or a creator and you're actually doing stuff, there's a few other places to actually share people that want to learn and connect with other people like Twitter. And so that's why I think you're wicked smart to take advantage of that. But your growth, I'd say, is not the norm. So could you share some of like your inner tips of how you actually grew?
So honestly, like I think I should be farther along than I am.
Really?
So I guess it's like the beauty's in the eye of the beholder sort of a thing.
Okay.
It's just consistency, dude, honestly. And just meeting people. And so like there's like retweets are important, right? And so when I have like a thread that I want to get coverage or exposure, I'll send it out to some of the people I met, be like, ask them, will you retweet this for me? And that's sort of like a catalyst that can ignite a thread to catch fire. But that's really where the growth comes from, is these threads, like a thread hitting with the market, quote unquote, on Twitter. And that's where like pops of followers come from.
Okay. And so for writing threads, because that's a pretty big undertaking. Like, how can someone get better at writing those?
Honestly, I would say the hard way is like threads that did well, handwrite them out. And just like copy a thread, not to copy to post it, but just copy the act of writing out someone else's writing. It's like just trains your brain how to write better.
Okay.
So that's not sexy. Virtually no one's going to do that. But if you really want to get better, do it that way.
That's I've never heard that, but that's fantastic.
Yeah, and so that's one thing. And then from a thread standpoint, like there's so many resources out there, like Sahil. I think Sahil Bloom. Who else? There's a Ship 30 for 30 dudes. I think his name's Dickie Bush. I know that Sean from My First Million has like a Twitter writing course. I would say just like get in one of those, and they break down how to write threads really well. And it's not rocket science. It's like, I always go back to like everything that's being said on Twitter has already been said by someone. Anything you want to say has been said. And how do you just take those similar concepts, apply your spin on it, just like on any other platform kind of thing. But I would, if someone really wants to do it, jump in one of those courses, because it'll condense like the time frame to success.
Yeah, 100%. Love that approach. Yeah, I'll always expedite the learning if I can, and courses are a great way to do that. People who've already done that. And so with Twitter specifically, the big news outside headline has been the fact that Elon acquired them. So what are your thoughts as an active Twitter user? What are your thoughts on Elon acquiring the platform?
I mean, I think it's dope. Like, I'm in depth. I don't really get into the political stuff on Twitter. So whatever censorship or shadow bans they did before, like don't affect me.
Yeah.
But I think I'm all for like what his worldview on let everyone say what they want to say, and the merit of their argument determine
if it's
what's good and what's bad, or right or wrong. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so that I'm all for. But I hope the product, like there's so many like little product improvement. Like there's ways the product could be better. So I'm just hopeful as a user and consumer of content on the platform that once he gets there, maybe from a technical, product standpoint, it'll improve.
Yeah.
But overall, like I think it's dope. We'll see what the future holds, but I don't let it worry. It's like out of my control, so I don't worry about it. I don't think about it really.
Yeah, no, that's the best way to be about anything you can't control. It's like, why would you give any sort of mental energy to that when there are so many things that you can control? So I know.
Yeah, well, like my again, another like fatherly story. When I played baseball as a kid, I was a pitcher, and like I wasn't the best, but I wasn't the worst. Like I was already it's like one of the better kids on the team. And so as I got older and more competitive, on my high school team, like it wasn't like a baseball school. So it was me and a couple other guys who were like the baseball players, and we had like, a cast of characters in the field and stuff like that. But my dad would always say like, so errors would happen or plays that should be made that our routine weren't made, and I would get all bent out of shape. He's like, dude, like remove yourself from the outcome. Like your only job is throwing a strike. Whatever happens after, as long as you're in your spot, like you can't control any of it. So that again, that's put instilled in my mind from a very early age. Just like don't worry about stuff that you can't actually change, because what's the point?
Yeah, no, your dad sounds like a wise guy.
I know, dude. Sounds like the giver. I'm putting him on blast on this.
That's awesome. I'm all here for it. That's amazing. So another way that people are leveraging email, which I would say is more, like I've seen a lot of people with their personal brand do this, but I've seen a massive trend of people starting newsletters. So like not necessarily for a brand, but like a newsletter.
A persona.
So, exactly. Yeah. So what are your tips for people who want to try to do that?
Again, I think it just comes down to strategy. Like, what are you going to communicate, and how frequently are you going to communicate it, and also like, what do you want out of it for you, right? So like for me, I don't really have a newsletter. I have like an email list that I use to talk about stories around helping brands or business owners, and if they want help if this story resonates with them, they could jump on and talk to me or my sales team. But I don't have like a newsletter from a media standpoint, kind of like you're describing. And the reason why I don't have it is because going back to the bandwidth thing and focus, I'm like, I've always wanted to do it, but I also don't want to just do it for the sake of doing it or have it be like the same thing that everyone else is doing, because then I won't have the fire to keep doing it for the consistency piece, and it'll fall on its face. And so that's why I've always been like, I should do it because it's important to have the audience and the defensibility of having the list from a pure play media value standpoint. But I'm just like constrained from a time bandwidth perspective, and I don't want to do it half-assed, so I don't do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that if someone wants one, I think it's just about what's the strategy, what's your desired outcome, and like setting yourself for success in terms of how you be consistent doing it. Otherwise, there's a plethora of newsletters, people that start them 3 months later, there's nothing there, or 12 months later, there's nothing there. Yeah. Which is then it's like, what's the point of doing it in the first place?
True. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, you got to think about what the outcome is.
It's with the email shit, with the newsletter, it's all about the long tail.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's far too few people that are willing to play that game, especially when there's in the world of TikTok and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Where you can get a ton of success really, really fast. So
there's no quick money, but it's like if you stay the course, it'll be like an annuity. It'll pay you out forever.
Yeah.
But it's like you have to pay tax up front, but that paying tax period is over an extended period of time. There's no quick wins or no get rich quick building a newsletter list.
100%. Yeah, no, that's great advice. And so for the economy at large, it's a lot of people are talking about how the upcoming recession is going to impact a lot of businesses. And I've even had some of my paid media guys say that they've been impacted already by some of the brands they work with. Has any of that come to your agency, or do you see that happening with email, or do you think because of the deep connection you have with your lists and whatnot that you won't be impacted?
No, I think everyone's. I've been saying this for a couple months now, but I've just noticed things sort of like contracting. Like people are tightening their belts. People are fearful and so forth. So I think like it's hit us to some extent. I think it'll hit service providers everywhere to some extent. But I also think it's dependent on like the niche in which you service, right? So like in e-com, if we look from a macro standpoint, like there's supply chain issues, right? Ads costs are going up because of iOS 14, like Facebook doesn't have visibility. It did, so they can't perform how they did. So everything costs more. So ads cost more. And e-com stores also have to hold inventory as well. So that's a cost, like that's cash sitting there on a shelf.
True. And
so there's just less free cash flow for these businesses, especially e-com stores, to invest in like growing the brand because of all these increasing costs elsewhere, right? And so like e-com's in for a rough time for sure. But that's where like, info and digital products, they don't have the same limitations from a supply chain cost of goods standpoint. So they have more gross margin to play with than e-com stores. But then again, like this is why I say it's category specific, because then there's like, I don't know, a dentist, right? They have their own like different cost structure, but they don't have the same market. They have different market limitations than an e-com store has. So I think it's all sort of just like relative to the niche that the creator or the agency serves. But I think everyone's going to feel it to some extent.
Yeah. Okay. And so if you were someone, let's say you're just starting as an entrepreneur and you had to start at this point right now and you wanted to be in the online space, like what would your advice be to that person?
To start an agency?
Yeah.
I would say like getting clients is the most important thing. And so we're going into this like rough time right now. And I think a lot of like the pretenders agencies that like kind of churn and burn, they don't really do right by their clients. They don't like have a good product from an agency standpoint, are going to get washed out, which I'm very thankful for, because like they just make it more difficult for guys like me to do our thing. But I think someone just starting, I think it's just like, how do you get the first 4 or 5 clients? Yeah. And just don't worry about anything else. Like, don't try and make the most money, because again, going into this time, like us service providers are going to be the first, like they need us, but they're also going to be the first one on the block to go if they have to tighten the belt, right? Yeah. So it's like, what value to provide, and how do you give them much more value than you capture in dollars? And I would just say, like, I see a lot of like new agencies or business owners, they try and worry about all this stuff that doesn't matter. All that matters is 4 or 5 clients at $2,000 or $2,500 a month. If you do that, then that's $8K to $12,500 a month. Like, you have a nice little business right there. Then you can figure out how do you get help or do the next thing. But you don't need the perfect site. You really don't need anything. Just grind it and get to 4, and then you have a whole new set of problems or opportunities on your plate.
Yeah, absolutely. So solve the things you can control, and then figure out the rest.
Just get sales. Like, that's all that matters. Without clients, you have no business. So just get clients.
Yeah.
You don't need a fucking business card.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everyone gets addicted to that stuff because it's so easy and it's fun.
Well, because it makes you like feel productive.
Yes, but it's not moving the needle whatsoever. I don't even have business cards anymore.
Same.
But it is what it is. So I like to ask this. This has been awesome, man. But I like to ask this one question at the end sometimes. So I'm gonna throw it your way. So there's this hypothetical scenario where you can have a dinner party with any 3 people that you want, dead or alive, and you get to pick the main course and dessert. So who is coming to this dinner party, and then what are you eating?
That's a really hard question, dude. I wish you would have sent me that question beforehand.
I gotta put you on the spot, man. I gotta put you on the spot.
Let's see, dude. I would say Maverick.
Okay.
Not Tom Cruise, Maverick. I want him to come to dinner in character.
Okay. That's amazing.
All right. I would say so probably like Ronald Reagan.
Okay.
And I don't know how, like, it's so hard. Kobe.
That's a solid 3. And then, so what are you having for dinner?
Maybe I'll put Maverick on the B list and supplement him for like I don't know, dude, like Uncle Warren.
Okay, great call. And what are you guys having for dinner?
Steak.
Nice, good call. And then what about dessert?
Dessert, I don't know. I'll probably go with some like dark chocolate ice cream. Keep it simple.
Wow, that is. I like it, man. That's awesome. I love that answer. I've never heard anyone like, I've asked that question probably dozens of times, and I've never heard someone say a character. So that's awesome.
Well, dude, so like the movie just came out, but I also like, since I was a boy, I loved the movie Top Gun, and so I don't know. I just thought it'd be funny.
100%. No, I like it. I like it. I like it a lot, man. So again, we said that before, but the best place to connect with you is probably over on Twitter.
Hit me on Twitter at @ThePhilRivers.
Okay.
Or email me, phil@gotetra.co.
Amazing. Okay. So everything that we've talked about will be linked in the description box of this podcast. So go ahead, go follow Phil. You'll thank yourself later. And if you need email help of any kind, definitely go speak to him and work with.
Even if you got questions, just holler at me.
Amazing. Love that. And he will respond. I can attest to that. So,
yeah, don't be bashful.
Yes, definitely ask. Well, thanks so much, Phil. I appreciate you. Hope you have an awesome weekend, and I hope to chop it up again here soon.
Thank you for having me, dude.
Peace, man.